Okay, good morning, members. So, welcome to our next class, and with a topic that is there as much as we breathe. अभी मैं बात कर रहा हूँ तो I am communicating with you. You are listening to me, so obviously you are receiving a communication, and without which none of us can really navigate in this world. So it starts at the start of the day. It ends when we sleep. So what we are going to discuss in this class is a few important pillars or tenets of what would constitute effective communication. So, Geeta Dharma Mandal welcomes you to this class. We are we have decided that we will have a timing like 45 minutes for me, then Rishi, and then question and answers around whichever topics you want. It would always be good if there are questions around what we discussed today, so that we also understand that you are able to absorb and grasp what we are discussing. So let us begin. So I'm going to give you three important templates for making and receiving good communication. So the first key concept in communication starts in the mind. The most important part of any communication is preparing the mind of the other person. Only a small part is the act of actual communicating, whether verbally or otherwise. So I'll explain to you with an example. Suppose you are very hungry and you take a meal and you start eating it. So let's call it roti. Suppose you eat a one roti, your anger is not satisfied. You eat the second roti, you eat the third roti, you eat the fourth roti. Suppose you are very angry and you eat the fifth roti. After the fifth roti, you feel that your hunger is satisfied, you are no more hungry, pet bhar gaya. Now, can we say that the fifth roti is the only one which satisfied your hunger? The answer is no. All five are needed, which means we can break up into two parts. The first four rotis, which need the preparation of giving your brain and mind a feeling that you are 80% full. And when you ate the fifth one, suddenly you were completely satisfied. You had no more reason or motivation to eat because you were fully satisfied. There was no hunger. Pet bhar gaya. Same way with communication. Just like 80% of the time was spent in consuming the first four rotis, and those were the preparation for the fifth roti to communicate to your brain that I am no more hungry. Whenever we want to communicate with anybody, we have a responsibility to see whether the person has already consumed those first four rotis, which means is his or her mind prepared to receive this particular communication, without which obviously it will not achieve the purpose. So if you directly communicate to an unprepared mind, it fails because the recipient is not ready to receive it. It is like a farmer. If you go to a village and if you go to a farmer will say that the most important preparation of getting a crop is not sowing the seed. It is about preparing the soil properly and then only sowing the seed. Even if there is a healthy seed, but it is sown into an unprepared soil, it is going to get wasted, it will not sprout, no crop will come out, and vice versa. There are times when the soil is so well prepared by the farmer that even if the seed is not of the best quality, you will find that the crop can come out. It is like another example to the corporate world or what we all of do. Suppose you make a great presentation and then you make a sales pitch, but suddenly the customer is looking at you with a either giving you a blank stare or looks confused, which means what? You gave a good presentation, you are able to generate interest in your product, in your features, what else, but you did not prepare his mind enough to decide whether he wants to buy from you or not. और वो क्यों हुआ? Because you did not spend enough time in consuming the first 4 rotis. आपने शायद 2 रोटी के बाद पांचवी खाने की कोशिश की. Numerically, it is all fine, but it will not end up making him prepared to receive your communication, where you directly ask him कि मैं deal पक्का समझूं. Would you want to? Would I want to bill in your personal name or your official name? All those questions are premeditated. In your mind, you felt that you had done the preparation, but the preparation of the mind of the prospect was not done. To give you another example, which you can easily relate to, so that we are in a good way able to absorb what I am saying with an example. Let's say every night when you go to sleep, do you prepare your bed or you just go and lie down whichever way the bed is, or whichever way the bed sheet is, whichever way the pillow is? Generally, human beings are very particular. Okay, they might be changing the bed sheet every night. They would be changing the pillow covers once in a while. There should be no wrinkles on the bed sheet, and then only you feel. Then only psychologically you get prepared. Your mind is prepared that I am going to lie down on a bed which is comfortable and which will give me sleep. So अगर रोज जो हम सोने जाते हैं उसके लिए we need a prepared bed, while actually if there are a few wrinkles, if there is a 10-day-old pillow cover, we can easily sleep. लेकिन हम अगर इतनी मेहनत करते हैं तो imagine one person speaking to another person, suppose out of the blue, and he has not checked whether the other person is in a position, is in a mental frame to understand what I am saying. Is he there mentally? Is he there physically to understand? Then you can imagine what it will lead to. It will clearly lead to a failed communication, which we don't want to. But there are clear signs and indications if you care and observe. So, first of all, about timing. We always are in a rush to communicate something to somebody. But if you get the timing wrong, obviously, just due to the lack of time, the person will not be able to absorb what you are saying. So, don't start an important conversation when the recipient is mentally or physically not in a position to receive it. And generally, we do communicate important things to people unless you are chatting with friends or you are chatting at home. Then, secondly, what should be avoided is a well wisher syndrome. All of us, to people that we know well, we feel we know well, there's a well wisher syndrome. So, the moment somebody tries a new hairstyle or somebody has communicated to you that they lost a certain deal, there is a quick well wisher syndrome which sets in, where we are more in a feedback mode. We have lots of advice, and generally it all amounts to unsolicited advice because we have not let the other person complete their communication and we have tried to give a feedback, अच्छा है, बुरा है, whatever it is. So these two things should be the first important parameters based on which we should make important communication. The timing should not go wrong, and the well-wisher syndrome should not simply come in. We should be talking what is needed. What is the frame of the mind of the person to receive it. Now let us look at some common situations which we have heard or which we have experienced. So parents saying, my children don't understand when I tell them about our family practices. Either they ignore or they ask why. Abhi, people who are currently in their 40s and 50s, to give them an example, जब हमारे माँ बाप ने हमको बताया कि ये हमारा कुलदैवत है, we are supposed to go and bow before them once a year or whatever, or read their pothi, we have accepted that and mostly we have been doing it as a routine. Okay, but now if you tell a 8-year-old or a 10-year-old child that ये हमारा कुलदैवत है, ये करना है, he might even start doing it, but she might ask you later कि ये कुलदैवत क्यों है. So that doesn't mean that they are disobedient. The point is you have communicated to an unprepared mind. As simple as that. वो बेचारा कुछ वीडियो गेम खेल रहा है, वो अपने दोस्तों के साथ बर्थडे पार्टी में समोसे कचौरी वेफर्स खाने में उसका मेन माइंडशेयर है. Suddenly you went and told him that ये ऐसा होता है. So he has just asked a question why, which is not wrong. The point is you have communicated inappropriately. Then many people for whom the boss will hand you over a project and say that अगले 2 दिन में खत्म होना चाहिए. Now you started after a day, that is 50% of the time is over. You start feeling कि कितना difficult है, मेरे पास तो basic information नहीं है, data नहीं है, I have to do so much, I have to interact with so many people. However, how is it that my boss does not understand the difficulty level of this project when only he has handed it to me? अभी point ये है कि most of the bosses who delegate work, they have never done those projects themselves. Does not mean that they are not good at it or they don't understand, but you have not communicated to him appropriately to negotiate the timelines. Similarly, we all go through those moments when we feel that people are just communicating to me whatever they want. They are not understanding what I am trying to say. Okay, then let's take another example. There is a joint family. In the joint family, the young couple is feeling that continuously tanav hai. There are arguments, people are getting insulted unnecessarily, or nobody is happy. And the young couple is generally thinking कि it is high time that we separate at least for a few years. Let's have two different families. Like काफी लोग समझौता करते हैं ना, एक ही फ्लोर पे लेकिन दो अलग अपार्टमेंट्स में रहेंगे. While the parents have not even thought about that. उनको तकलीफ हो रही है, नहीं हो रही है, but it will not strike to them कि the family should get separated. Okay. And then what happens is one fine day, either the bahu or the son will go and announce कि mom, I feel that बहुत झगड़े हो रहे हैं, हमें separate होना चाहिए. What will be the reaction? The mother will start crying. Why? Because the son communicated to an unprepared mind. If you explain properly for some time, there will be resistance. मैं ये नहीं बोल रहा हूँ कि just because you say something 3 times or 4 times, that becomes easier for the other person. But it is how you do it. So here we are talking about preparing the mind. We are not talking about routine transactional communication. So these are the few examples where I wanted to demonstrate that how preparation of the mind is important in many life scenarios, and without which just taking the other person for granted does not help. So we have to understand mentally where they are, guide them, and then start the communication. And what's the tricky part? The communicator always believes that the responsibility of receiving the communication is on the listener. However, if you realize, if at all somebody has the responsibility of a good communication, that is the person who is communicating. जैसे the son that got up and told his mother that I think we should separate. Okay. Did the mother ask for that communication? No. Was she in a frame of mind to receive that communication? No. Who started the communication? The son started the communication. So in that case, whose is the primary responsibility to ensure that the other person is in a good position to understand, first of all, comprehend, and then accept? So that is something that we should all remember. This responsibility lies with the person who is initiating the communication. A farmer cannot blame the soil if the crop does not come. It is the responsibility of the farmer to do the plowing, the tilling, and whatnot before the seed is thrown. Is that understood? Now, what happens is all these communication problems not only lead to different sorts of failed communication, these lead to relationship problems. So, over a period of time, both the people or the multiple people start feeling that the other person doesn't understand about him. Then he doesn't care about him. Then it goes on to say कि उसको कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, and it can actually lead to a lot of acrimony, bad blood. And this, another thing, if you see, generally where does the communication go wrong? It goes more wrong in cases where there are long-term relationships or people feel they know each other. वहीं पे for granted का problem ज़्यादा हो जाता है. वहीं पे many times we are not able to distinguish between transactional communication and important communication. And for the important communication, you should not do it the way you do the transactional communication. आज रात को क्या खाने में करना है is transactional communication. I believe, unless it has reached a level of acrimony already, but that is transactional communication. But telling something important where you want to communicate that, all the examples that I said, those are certainly not transactional communication. Your mother caring for you to, or your wife caring for you to decide what is good for you in the night to eat and making that food, versus you communicating abruptly that it is better to separate. These are not two same types of communications and two same types of transactions. So basically इसमें भी क्या दिखता है हमें? लेजीनेस दिखता है, तामसिकता दिखती है. अ पर्सन जो उठ के मुंह खोल के जो चाहिए बोल के चला जाता है is certainly in the tamasic category. Just to draw on the earlier classes that we had, he is lazy, ignorant about the other person, does not bother what the other person is thinking, what the other person is doing. Now let's continue with your examples so that it remains interesting as well as you are able to relate, because again, as I said, all these examples are being given because either you have encountered them or you will encounter them, either personally or in your family or in your friends or your colleagues. So let's say there is a girl in her 20s. She is in a relationship with a boy for 3 years. अभी क्या है कि there are so many avenues that the parents still don't know about it. Nobody's seen them going around together. Okay, they are lucky. One day they both decide that Abhi, we have to go ahead and it is good that we can marry and take this to the next level. So her mind starts telling her, okay, Mr. X has told me, I also agree. Time to cement the relationship. So what happens? One fine day she goes home from office and tells her parents, come here, announces, I am going to marry Rahul. What will be the reaction? First of all, there will be a shock. Okay. Then what was she supposed to do? She was supposed to first tell something which was meaningful, that how they know each other, why they know each other, and this has to be built up over a period of time. Okay. So she took the parents for granted. You are bound to get a sharp, unfavorable reaction when this kind of a communication happens. And then what does the communicator feel? The communicator feels, इनको समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. They don't understand me well. They don't understand that I am 25 years old. They don't understand that I have freedom of choice, etc., etc. But the point is, actually, they are aligned to all these things. That is why you are highly educated. That is why you are going to office. That is why you are meeting lots of people. That is why you are dating. Okay, the parents are aligned to that. But the fact is, did you make them part of the decision? Answer is no. Did you bother to prepare their mind? No. The farmer threw the seed on an unprepared soil, and that led to tension. So, the conclusion of this part of our discussion is always take the complete blame for bad communication if you are the communicator. The day you start thinking this way, your thought process will change, how you want to communicate with people, why you want to communicate people. And then you will spend enough time in eating the 4 rotis and then the fifth one. Do not go around throwing the fifth roti. All the communications will fail, and some will have an immediate backlash, some will not have a backlash. But after some time, relations do get affected. And more importantly, the bad communicator keeps on feeling कि मेरे को मैं जो बात करता हूँ किसी को समझ में नहीं आ रहा. Okay, my son used to be close to me till the age of 10. Now he is not close to me. Why? Because you are not trying to understand what he is picking up from the peer group. You are trying to tell in some Stone Age language which he is not understanding. He is spending a lot of time with people or his classmates where the language, the topics match, and then suddenly there is a rift. Was this rift planned? Did it happen because the relation is bad? No. It was purely due to lack of communication in the appropriate way. But again, it is the failure of the communicator. Now let us understand what happens in Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, the important references which will again cement what I am saying. So we have completed the first pillar of communication. Two more will follow. But before that, let us look at some of the important things that have happened. So in the first adhyay, in the 22nd slok, this is the same premise where Arjun and Krishna are on the Rath and the war is about to start, and see what is the mindset of Arjun. He says, "O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so I may see who is present here, who is desirous of fighting, and with whom I must contend in this great battle." Means mentally he is fully ready to go see the faces of people one last time before he will wage war against them. Then he continues on the 23rd slok. "Let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra." So एकदम क्लियर है कौन एविल माइंडेड है, उसे क्या करना है, एक बार शक्ल देख लूं. And then in a few shlokas, or maybe in the next 10 to 15 minutes after he sees them, okay, where does he start? First adhyay, shlok number 45. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts knowingly, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. Shlok number 46. I would consider it better for the sons of Dhritarashtra to kill me, even when I am unarmed and unresisting, rather than fight with them. So अभी क्या हो गया है? Arjun's mentality has done a 360 degrees turn from somebody who was completely ready for doing his duty, the war as a Kshatriya. He has gone back and said that it's the worst thing to do. At that time, if Sri Krishna or whoever was going to be his guide, if he had started just preaching something which was transactional, would it have helped Arjun to get up from the back of the Rath and do immediately pick up his Gandhi and start the war? The answer is no. So, what did the communicator do over here? So, first of all, effective communication was possible because the communicator did not aim to be an intellectual talking to an intellectual in a classroom condition. So, standard sermons nahi हुए. Okay. The communicator remained prasannachit in spite of the fact that the listener was frustrated, confused, and had a complete loss of energy. He had a panic attack. So the communicator did not give the same body language that was coming to him. He stood still. He was prasanna. He still spoke to him like a younger brother or a family member. He did not start admonishing him. हम लोग काफी बार जब ऐसा कोई सब छोड़ देता है, हम लोग पहले तो उसको बहुत ही जोर से we come down upon that person कि कैसे तुम गलत कर रहे हो. While that needs to be communicated, the body language of the two people is exactly the way it should be. The communicator. The communicator was sticking to the objective of communication, but he kept a tab on the swinging emotions and the mental conditioner of the listener. So it was very necessary that once Arjun has communicated transparently his state of mind to Sri Krishna took his responsibility to start communicating. He did not keep any gap. He did not feel कि अभी चलो बाद में देख लेते हैं. Okay. He went to long lengths to solving all the questions and preparing the mind of the listener for the alignment to the common and larger goal. So the communicator was very clear that this fellow is keeping his personal issues, his personal moha towards his elders in mind. While हम यहाँ क्यों आए हैं? We have come for the larger goal, which is for the benefit of mankind. And Arjun is a leader who is supposed to achieve that. And then all the communication started and ended there. So we have almost 700 shlokas of this communication. So imagine in difficult situations, a communicator has to go to long lengths to get the message across. It does not happen by losing your temper. It does not happen by conveying something in the most abstract and standard way. So where does Sri Krishna start? In the second adhyaya, second slok. Hey Arjun, from where have you suddenly got this moha at a wrong time? Because what you are saying has not even been followed by the greats before you, does not lead to heaven. and doesn't even give you fame. Akirti milegi tumhe. Okay. So he has asked a basic question and then he is communicating three things which will surely make Arjun think कि तुम्हारे पहले जो ग्रेट हुए थे उन्होंने कभी ऐसे तुम्हारे जैसा काम नहीं किया, आचरण नहीं किया. They did what you are saying will not lead you to heaven. कि तुम अशस्त्र बन के if you get attacked and killed by the Kauravas, it will go. That is not going to happen. I am telling you, and it will surely give you a kirti. It will be disgraceful for you. Then he continues with stronger words. Slok number 3 of second Adhyaya. Do not yield to impotence, O Partha. This does not befit you. Cast off this mean weakness of the heart. Stand up, O Parantapa. Parantapa means scorcher of enemies. So यहाँ पे in this श्लोक you will see so smartly, shrewdly. Every word कहीं पे वो उसकी स्तुति कर रहा है और कहीं पे एकदम ही नीचे लेके जा रहा है. Do not yield to importance, O Parth. This is the worst thing that generally a Kshatriya can hear. Then he says, it does not befit you. मतलब importance तुम्हारा शोभा नहीं देता because तुम वैसे नहीं हो, मैं गारंटी दे रहा हूँ. Cast off this mean weakness of the heart. तुम्हारा हार्ट जो अभी वीक हो गया है वो भी मोह माया में इन अ मीन वे यू कास्ट दिस ऑफ. व्हाई? स्टैंड अप. वो परांतप. परांतप मीन्स somebody जिसको देख के शत्रु भयभीत हो जाता है, उसके लिए it does not befit you to have this weakness of heart. So this is the kind of communication which is trying to prepare the mind of the other person. Then he continues, slok number 31 of the second adhyaya. Further, looking at your own duty, you should not waver from this war. And there is nothing higher for a Kshatriya than a righteous sword. And he continues in Shlok number 32. Happy indeed are the Kshatriyas, O Parth, who are called to fight in such a battle that itself becomes an open door to heaven. So if you see in these few shlokas where he has started his communication, he has addressed some of the main questions that Arjuna has said. He has shot down the wrong philosophy of Arjun, where Arjuna has said कि मैं अशस्त्र बन के इनसे हारूंगा, मर जाऊंगा तो मुझे हेवन मिलेगा. He is also reminding him of his duties. अभी आप देखोगे तो somebody who has to look at it critically will say कि क्षत्रिय होना तो उसको पता था, फिर ये युद्ध उसके लिए वो तो पता था. But the time is, you look at the kind of words that are chosen. Continuously he says Parth, means he looks at him as a younger brother whom he is guiding. So that comfort is there. Why? Because Arjuna has transparently shared with him his problem. So he is looking at him as a guide and he is becoming one. Then he is also praising him, and while praising him, showing that a Parantapa, a Kshatriya, what they are supposed to do, and you are not thinking in that direction. So I hope this particular role play has given you a fair idea of how a difficult communication should be started. Because as they say, well begun is half done. वैसे ही badly begun is almost over. जब आदमी mentally down रहता है, sad रहता है, not in a position to absorb anything, at that time, a start of a wrong communication always leads to end of the communication. We need to understand that. उसके बाद it's a Herculean task to open up the mind and then again try to pour in what you wanted to pour. Now let's look at the second side, the second pillar of communication. So what are the responsibilities of a listener? So again, let's start with this example itself. Arjun lost his balance, mental balance. The good part was he was aware that he has lost his mental balance, and that's why he trusted Sri Krishna. He asked all sorts of questions over the 15-16 adhyayas, but was ready to listen to all the explanations and absorb them. So the first rule for a listener is, अगर आप किसी को पहली बात तो आप किसी को ट्रस्ट करते हो क्या? अगर करते हो तो उसके बाद उसका सुना भी करो. Today we encounter a lot of situations where people say that they trust somebody, they have respect for somebody, but वो आदमी जब बात करने लगता है तो बिल्कुल सुनते नहीं. They still want to say कि their self-talk is much louder than the communication that is coming from a learned person, from a veteran, which can be helpful for you. So Arjun firmly believed that since he was confused, He had to listen to a well-wisher or a close person, and he wanted to come out of the confusion because he was standing on the cusp of a war. He had to decide whether he had to do that war or he had to go and take sannyas, which he was talking in one of the slokas. At that time, we need to listen. We should understand that we are confused. We should be self-aware. If you look at another example, okay, Duryodhan, when he was adamant that he will not ready to give or divide the kingdom between the Pandavas and me, mujhe pura chahiye. And then finally, Shri Krishna has arrived as a messenger to Indraprasth and a negotiator. He refused to agree to give land, even 5 villages or anything. So here, the lack of listening skill and poor understanding of the situation led to the bloodiest war in the history till then. It destroyed all the Kauravas and many kings which supported them. Similarly, if you look at the Ravan and the Hanuman incident. Anyway, since Ravan had brought Sita अपहरण किया था तब से there were voices in Sri Lanka right in his home, which was his wife as well, was telling that this is not the right thing to do. Okay, but at that time he ignored them. But you look at what Hanumanji did. Hanuman came, he met Sita, he gave Ram's message, then he allowed himself to be captured. Then he clearly told Ravan what is the power of Sri Ram, what is the power of the Sena, what they can do. And then when Ravan did not listen to it, he was trying to make a joke out of him by putting a fire to his tail. He burned down all the golden homes of the rich people of Lanka. अभी इतना कम्युनिकेशन एक्शन से वर्ड से सब तरीके से आ रहा है फिर भी रावण ने उसको इग्नोर किया सो वेन एवर एज अ लिसनर we are being rigid. We are not paying any attention to what somebody important is communicating, or there is an overall communication coming to you from multiple people, say as a CEO of an organization or as a head of a family or whatever. Think of Duryodhana and Ravana at that point of time. When you are trying to ignore all important communication, आप सोचना चाहिए कि ये जो कम्युनिकेशन आ रहा है मैं इग्नोर तो कर सकता हूँ पर उस टाइम पे दुर्योधन और रावण को याद कीजिए और बाद में क्या हुआ था इसीलिए it is very important that when in a leadership role, which as I said, we all are, in the earlier classes also we have discussed, every person goes through various leadership roles in their lifetime. So it should not be underestimated. And the rigidness and not listening properly, not preparing our mind to absorb the communication from key people can lead to unfavorable consequences, not only for self, but for all those on behalf of whom you are jointly responsible. So the responsibility of listener may not be limited to his life or his decisions. It can affect many other people who are dependent on that decision, just like in the case of Duryodhana and Ram. Now, what is meant by a good listener? So, first of all, there are some aspects to it which we might be aware, but it always makes sense to communicate in a hard way. Pay attention with the ears and the mind, not only with the ears. सिर्फ श्रवण भक्ति नहीं करनी चाहिए. Are you able to absorb the way the communicator is communicating? While on that particular topic or area of life, you would have your take, your opinion. Are you able to give enough space in your mind to the important communicator to see what is his angle or perspective? Is she telling you something which is new, which was not known to you? And then are you ignoring it or are you taking it into account? Many times we make the mistake that when we are listening just to say something. We are just controlling the urge to say something. Which means मैं काफी बार देखा रहेगा कि कोई बात कर रहा है important, सामने वाला बार बार उसको टोक देता है. So many times nowadays the communication happens either because people are short of time or they are short of memory or they are really short of understanding. So many communications become a two-way communication forcibly, which means सामने वाला कुछ बोल रहा है, by the time they complete 2 sentences, this guy has already, the listener has already started talking. और कभी कभी कोई 5 मिनट चुप भी बैठता है, तो the communicator can make out कि he is just listening and he's about to talk. He's about to talk. He's controlling that. So that would be the worst way to listen, because you are not listening actually. You are just trying to talk while listening. So most of the examples of failed communication are about people who are close to each other and the failure happens there. Why does it happen? Due to presumptions and prejudgments. And इसका कोई इलाज नहीं. Having presumptions and prejudgment after knowing people for a few months or few years is going to happen. The brain works that way. The way to unshackle that is to be a good listener when the person is talking. When a new perspective comes from that person, not to just blow it away considering this is also nonsense, but paying attention to that and ensuring that you are able to be flexible to change your opinion. Now I'll just take it to a higher plane. Okay. So human beings are the only beings created by God on this earth who can think and do what they want. Just to give an example, एक सुबह आप completely frustrated, angry, दुखी हो सकते हो, but during the day you can think from a different perspective, you can meditate, and by the end of the day you can again be a happy person. ये पावर सिर्फ ह्यूमन बींग्स में है. सो अगर ये पावर हमें है, okay, तो this power can sometimes come from communication of others also. We need to believe that it doesn't come only with your self talk, only you thinking something. Do you all agree that we have this power to change a perspective? And there are many ways to look at it. Something which makes us very agitated today, if we look at it from a 5-year perspective, we just realize that we are wasting our time. Okay, it has no importance from a 5-year perspective. So अगर ये सब leadership बोलो या management skills बोलो, ये सब अगर सिखाया जा सकता है, many times this also comes from other people. So the communication part by the listener is as important as that of the communicator. Just because somebody wants to communicate to you doesn't mean you have to ignore it. It doesn't make it his responsibility. अगर आपसे कोई कुछ important बात करना चाहता है, आप busy हो, आप ready नहीं हो, then you can always say आज नहीं कल बात करते हैं, कल नहीं परसों बात करते हैं. But ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए कि वो कल कभी आए नहीं. So that's the important part of the listener. Now let's look at some of the common issues of the communicator and the listener. So as we had said, in a close relation or where we know many years, the communicator takes the other person and his mindset for granted. Okay. He misinterprets the thought process of the listener, either assumes or against, and delivers the communication. Okay. Then assumes that he or she should support you unconditionally, but this is never the case, because human beings are not wired that way. If you see today's world in the last 2 to 3 decades, many relations have gone from pure emotions to information. सबको सब information चाहिए रहती है. Okay. So in this information age, if you are not a good communicator, not only there are going to be misinterpretations, prejudgments, but those prejudgments are going to be wrong about it. So to expect that somebody supports you unconditionally, which is generally not the case, you have to be a good communicator. You have to align people. ये कॉर्पोरेट्स में हमेशा सिखाया जाता है, okay, कि सबको अलाइन करो. अगर आप आपकी फंक्शन में सप्लाई चेन में आप कोई डिसीजन लेने वाले हो, and if you feel 2 functions are going to be affected by that decision, which is say marketing and finance, do take them in the loop, do communicate to them, and ensure that they have also got a buy-in. Do not take a decision as a supply chain head, because you are a supply chain head and you can take a supply chain decision. There are very few decisions or areas in a company where only one function is affected. But because of the department-wise structure, there are many decisions which a particular departmental head can take. इसीलिए a lot of time is spent by companies to go on offsite, create some friendship between the department heads and the next level. वो इसीलिए होता है कि पहली बात तो उसको याद रहना चाहिए कि ये भी कंपनी में है, मेरा दोस्त है. I am not working only for supply chain. He is also getting affected. Today, while taking a decision, if I keep him in the loop, I communicate properly, tomorrow finance will also take a decision which will affect supply chain. There is a likelihood that he or she will also keep me in the loop and supply chain will not be adversely affected. So a communicator needs to have this bent of mind, in spite of the fact that you know that people will have some natural biases, prejudices, and judgments. The second part is, as I said, the Kuladevat example. Okay. In a way, you can say the earlier generation telling the next generation कि ये हमारी कुलदेवता है या कुलदेवत है was the imposition of their views on the next generation. Okay. कि पहले से ऐसा चल के आ रहा है, आप इसको accept करो. In the information age, this is slowly not working well. So everything needs to have some reason, some communication, some explanation. So as long as we understand that, then the communication will be well rounded. Otherwise, pure sharp communication like arrows are going to be met with a wall. The arrow will not be successful. Similarly, as a listener, we should not presume what the person is trying to say. We should not prejudge कि अगर ये टॉपिक है तो ये आदमी ऐसे ही बात करेगा, अगर ये इशू है तो ये आदमी ऐसे ही बिहेव करेगा. People evolve over a period of time. We should give them a chance. We should be able to look at things with an open mind when needed. This is not applicable to all scenarios. It is always possible that some people are cunning. It is always possible that some people always come to you just to get their objectives met. And as long as you have the proof for it, you can shut the communication. So, the bottom line of the first two pillars of communication is, अगर communication करना है, देना है, लेना है, ठीक से करो. You have a choice to shut off communication. अगर आप किसी में बिलीव नहीं करते हो, किसी को एविल मानते हो, you are not happy with that person, you know that after 20 years also he or she thinks like this, कभी सुधरने वाला नहीं है, तो close the communication. But do not keep on doing communication to fro, just like a game which will never end. And it will certainly corrupt you and the relations around you. Coming to the last part of communication, and I think this is certainly last but not the least, very, very important, internal communication. So every person, every human being has two lines of communication in their mind. One is कि वो दुनिया के साथ क्या बोल रही है, बोल रहा है, दुनिया उसके साथ क्या बोल रही है, और internally क्या आवाज चल रही है. And most of the times, whatever is your mind is telling to your brain, or brain is telling to your mind, or heart is telling to the mind, that rules everything or overrules the other part of communication which is visible. Even today, what I am being able to communicate to you, what will matter most is during this time and after this time of listening to me, what you are going to communicate to you after this class. What is going to be your takeaway? What view you formed and what you told yourself, what you can take or not take, is going to be more important than how well I am communicating with all this. That is the importance of internal communication. From these 90 minutes, what you choose to pick up is your internal communication. 90 minutes में कुछ और ही हुआ रहेगा. For sure, there will always be a deviation. But that is the importance. So there are many examples of this, funny examples, serious examples. Many times, you see somebody coming and complimenting कि you will become a great person one day. You have such good skills. The person is shocked. His internal communication is so poor कि उसको लगता है कि सामने वाला मजाक कर रहा है उसका. Okay, ऐसा भी होता है. That's why somewhere we have to create a world for ourselves where there is some alignment between our internal communication and what the people around us are telling us. That is why it is said a man is known by the company he keeps. Okay. अगर जैसे we have seen in right from college days, people have friends who always किसी को चढ़ाते हैं, किसी को नीचे दिखाते हैं. Okay. So it's always good to be in a group where people are able to talk sense, talk facts, and their opinions are based on that, rather than something that happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, etc. Because that will have a direct bearing on your internal communication. अभी communication का आज हम जो एक lecture ले रहे हैं, it will have limited impact on you because you are here for 90 minutes, 100 minutes. However, when you are with somebody as a friend or as a spouse or anybody, and they keep on communicating the same thing to you about a particular topic, the ability of your internal communication to withstand that is very low. इसीलिए ऐसे लोगों में रहो जो आपको अच्छा एडवाइस दे सके, आपको फैक्ट्स बता सके. And what happens is this internal communication highly impacts your ability to receive and give communication. और एक एग्जांपल देता हूँ. How we are nowadays even taking praise is difficult. Okay, so a couple of lady friends come to a friend, she's also a lady, and tell her, very nice sari, you are looking very good. But अभी unfortunately जो lady so called nice साड़ी पहनी है, she has a grouse कि पिछले 6 महीने में उसने कोई नई साड़ी खरीदी नहीं है, and she is not liking her current sarees. So while they appreciate the sari, her look and everything, her first reaction is, जमाना हो गया मैंने कोई साड़ी या नया कपड़ा लेके, ओके, टाइम ही नहीं मिला है, आई डिडंट लाइक एनीथिंग. अरे बट इट इज स्टिल गुड ना, सामने वाले लोग बोल रहे गुड है तो गुड है, एक्सेप्ट तो करो. शी कंटिन्यूज, अभी मुझे जाके अच्छी साड़ी लेनी है, पता नहीं आप लोग को इसमें अच्छा क्या दिख रहा है. सो हियर यू सी एन इंटरनल कम्युनिकेशन एंड एन एक्सटर्नल कम्युनिकेशन. एक तो आज लोग एक दूसरे को प्रेस करना इतना मुश्किल है, गलती से कोई आपको प्रेस कर रहा है, बट आप उसको ओवर द टॉप जाके कन्विंस कर रहे हो कि कैसे ये साड़ी पुरानी है, मैंने 6 महीने में कुछ नया खरीदा नहीं है. अरे बट इट स्टिल कैन बी गुड ना, ऐसा नहीं है कि गुड नहीं हो सकती. सो सिंपल कुड हैव बीन टू टेक नोटिस, हाँ इन्होंने बोला है, लुक एट, मे बी इट इज गुड, बोले हाँ अच्छी है, पुरानी है, बट आई एम वेरी हैप्पी दैट इट इज अ गुड साड़ी, यू लाइक इट. इतना दिस वुड हैव सफाइड. So see, I'm giving a very small example of how external and internal communication does not match at all most of the times, because our internal communication is not ready to accept what is being told to us. Now if you look at other examples in a annual appraisal, अभी आप किसी एम्प्लॉय को few months before the annual appraisal अगर पूछोगे कि अप्रेजल किस लिए होता है, तो he will parrot you all the right things. Okay, कि अप्रेजल में मैंने क्या ठीक किया मुझे पता चलेगा, मैंने क्या ठीक नहीं किया मुझे पता चलेगा, मुझे रेटिंग पता चलेगा, मेरे क्या वीकनेसेस है उसके बेसिस पे मुझे कौन से ट्रेनिंग पे भेजना है. बट यू सी व्हेन ही एंटर्स द केबिन ऑफ द बॉस, उसका जो बॉडी लैंग्वेज रहता है वो जैसे बैठ जाता है, इट्स कंप्लीटली रिजिड जनरली. अभी क्या वो चाइल्ड साइकोलॉजी में जैसे अभी बॉसेस भी सुधर गए, दे विल ऑल्सो फर्स्ट मेक अ लिस्ट कि मैं 4 चीज पहले इसको अच्छा बताऊं ताकि मुझे जो 2 प्रॉब्लम्स बताने हैं उसका कुछ तो एक्सेप्टेंस आएगा. लेकिन मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम व्हाट हैपेंस, वो बॉस बेचारा लिख लिख के 1 2 3 4 अच्छी चीजें बताता है, ये ठीक हुआ, ये ठीक हुआ, अरे आई गॉट गुड फीडबैक फ्रॉम द अदर डिपार्टमेंट, दिस प्रोजेक्ट वेंट वेल, एंड देन व्हेन ही स्टार्ट्स, बट देयर आर अ कपल ऑफ थिंग्स आई वुड लाइक टू टेल. ही टेल्स द फर्स्ट थिंग, इमीडिएट रिएक्शन आता है, बट बॉस मैंने तो ऐसे किया नहीं था, बट बॉस ऐसे हुआ ही नहीं था, बॉस आपने ही बोला था ऐसा करो. सो this is where the internal communication is important, that many times we know what is in theory, but while putting it in practice it becomes very difficult. So your internal communication needs to be aligned with the purpose of a certain communication. आपको जब पता है कि in an appraisal a boss is going to talk about weaknesses and that is going to help you, be open to first receive it. If your first reaction is to contradict, which means the entire purpose is gone. और वो पर्पस क्या है, आपने पूरे साल जो काम किया था उसका डिस्कशन चल रहा है. इट इज नॉट समथिंग विच इज ट्रांजैक्शनल. इट इज नॉट अबाउट एनी पर्टिकुलर वर्क दैट यू डिड और कम्युनिकेशन दैट यू डिड, या एक दिन आप एब्सेंट थे उसके बारे में डिस्कशन नहीं चल रहा है, वो सब ट्रांजैक्शनल है, राइट. सो if your internal communication rejects the possibility of what the person is communicating, that communication goes wasted, and instead of negation we can hear him. This is the reason why we need to be attentive when the communication is happening, not only for the sake of the one who is communicating, but for our improving our own internal communication. If you reflect, most people cannot get these simple things right, because somewhere nowadays we are all in a hurry. a hurry to reach somewhere, a hurry for the next communication, the hurry to reply to the next email, the hurry to leave office on time, the hurry to manage the traffic and reach home. But this is one aspect where human beings are differentiated from all types of beings over here. The ability to have a good internal communication and the ability to have a good communication and have our way. Most of the people who have achieved something in life have achieved because they could get a lot of communication right. Nobody who became big happened only as a solo player. Nobody who managed good relations happened because he was a good one-way communicator. So, this is the concluding part. Have I been able to communicate the key tenets of communicating to you? And now I am transferring the responsibility of practicing this day in, day out, till you feel a level of comfort with thinking on these three things. Preparing the mind of the person receiving the communication when you are communicating, the listener's responsibilities, and last but not the least, how you manage your internal communication so that the external communication is managed well by you and it makes sense. Should not be at loggerheads. So that's all from me. And over to Rishi now.